If you've ever tried to hem a t-shirt with your regular home sewing machine, I bet you noticed a few things. Number one, the straight stitch does not stretch. So as soon as you put that t-shirt over your head, you pop that bottom hem seam. And then if you've done 2 stitches so that it looks authentic, then both of them pop. Lastly, even if you're using a stretch needle, I'm guessing your machine has probably eaten your fabric. It's maddening. So today I'm going to show you how you can get that double seam stretchy stitch along the bottom of your t-shirt and also how to prevent your machine from eating your fabric. Let's take a look at the supplies you'll need. First, you'll need an extra wide twin needle and a machine capable of using one. This machine is not equipped to handle a double needle as it only has a hole for one single needle. However, this machine has a nice slit right in the middle, allowing a twin needle to easily fit inside. Although a walking foot is not required for this project, you may find it helpful in moving all of the layers of fabric at the same time. You'll also need 2 spools of the same color thread. Or, like me, you can just cheat and wind an extra bobbin and use one of those as your spool. Now, the key to prevent your machine from eating your t-shirt as you're hemming it is a stabilizer underneath. So you could get something like this, which is a tear easy stabilizer, or you can use something that is readily available that you have around the house, computer paper. Simply rough cut a few strips of computer paper about 1.5 to 2 inches wide, and then we're ready to sew. Now that we've got all of our strips and all of our supplies, let's get the machine ready. First, we'll install our twin needle just like we would any other needle. Make sure that your needle position is in the center so you don't break a needle on the throat plate. Before you begin sewing, use the flywheel on the side of your machine to make sure that the needles both go into the machine and out of the machine without striking anything. Most machines have an extra spindle that you can put on the top for double needle sewing. Take your spool of thread and put it where it normally goes on the spool, and take your second spool of thread, or in my case, a cheater bobbin, and place it on the spindle. Grabbing both ends of the thread from both spools of thread, you're going to put them together as if they were one and thread the machine exactly like you normally would. Once you're ready to thread both needles, continue as if it was one thread until it comes time to thread the actual needles. Then separate the threads and put one through the needle on the left and one through the needle on the right. After you've loaded your bobbin, it's time to test your stitch length and thread tension on the scrap that you've cut from the bottom of your t-shirt. You'll probably have to put your tension pretty low in order for the back of the stitch not to pinch. Now, this test of the fabric is going to tell you whether or not you need a stabilizer. Some fabrics cooperate, some don't. But the other thing that helps is having a brand new twin needle. The sharper the needle, the easier it is to get through your layers of fabric, and the less chance you have of those needles shoving the fabric down into your machine. You can see our test looks fantastic. And it's just a little bit stretchy so that you can put it on over your head. This is what it looks like on the back side. Here's a test of 4 stitches I did where my tension was very high, not so high, pretty low, and very low. You can see when your tension on your machine is too high, it puckers way too much. Here's what the front side looks like. This tension is too high. A little less high, lower, and even lowest. This one looks great. Okay, now that we have our machine all prepared and ready to sew, let's pin our t-shirt. I've cut off the bottom of my t-shirt to exactly the length I want, plus 1 inch. You'll notice that I folded that inch over and I have pressed it to the inside of the t-shirt and I have pinned it. Now, finishing the edge is not required because when you cut knits, they don't unravel, but you can easily finish this with a serger edge or an overlock stitch. In this case, I'm not finishing it at all, so I'm going to be very careful to pin very close to the raw edge so it doesn't roll over as I'm sewing. If you would like a cuter look on your sleeve, you can also cut the hem off of your sleeve and then fold that under 1 inch as well. Or if that becomes too short, you can simply fold the existing hem underneath inside the sleeve and pin it, and you can sew it the exact same way we're going to sew the hem. Okay, we are finally ready to sew our t-shirt. Now, because we want the double needle stitch to be on the outside of the garment instead of on the inside, we're going to have to sew on the top of the garment, which means we're sewing blind. We will not be able to see the rough edge so that we make sure we're catching it. So we have to remember that, and I'll show you how to get around that problem. First, find the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance on your sewing machine. We are going to be lining up the folded edge of our hem with that line. Find the side seam, or if you're doing the sleeves, find the armpit seam and start there. This way, when you backstitch, it will either be on the side of the work or under the armpit and won't be noticed. Now we're ready to place the stabilizer. Making sure that you have your folded edge lined it up with the 5/8 of an inch guarantees that even though you're sewing blind, you'll still catch this whole seam allowance on the back side. We're going to take the stabilizer and we're just going to tuck it under there, lining it up with the edge of our fabric as well. Now it's time to start sewing. You don't need a backstitch when you start because you'll be sewing all the way around the garment and you'll drive over where you started and then backstitch at the end. The first issue I'm encountering is the seam right here. As you watch my sewing machine go forward, you'll notice it gets stuck on that hump. If you are having trouble sewing over the seam, use the flywheel on the side of your machine to walk a stitch forward, and when the needles are in the air, lift your foot and move the fabric away from you. Close the foot, place another stitch manually, and continue in this manner to tiptoe over the seam until you are past it and you can begin sewing again normally. Keep an eye on your stabilizer underneath. Once you run out of stabilizer, simply grab another piece, overlap it just a little bit, and then you can continue sewing. Once you're close to where you started, make sure you drive over and do a backstitch. This is the underarm of my sleeve. Notice I started on one side of the armpit seam, went around, and then stopped on the other side. Because of the bulk in that seam, I didn't even bother sewing across it. It'll be under the armpit, so nobody will notice. Don't forget to backstitch at both ends. Now that you're all done sewing, it's time to gently tear away the stabilizer.
No matter what kind of stabilizer you use, there will always be some pieces left behind due to the nature of this stitch. To get them out, gently just wiggle on a few sides of it and they'll pull right out. A lot of it will also come out in the first washing.
Now, picking out all of these pieces of stabilizer underneath the seam can definitely be tedious, so take it to the couch, turn on your favorite show on Netflix. You can also technically trim off the edges of whatever your stabilizer is and leave some of it in there. However, I don't like to do that because I feel like it messes with the drape and the natural fold that comes with the hem. So I just like to take my time and pick it all out.
Once you're done, you'll notice that you have a very nice double stitch at the bottom of your t-shirt with quite a bit of give. Also, if you chose to hem the sleeve, you have a cute little cap sleeve also with a double hem that's nice and stretchy.
Okay, let's check out the difference in fit here. First of all, here's me, very unhappy with my shirt before hemming. It's fine, a little bit long. And here it is after. Perfect length, hem looks authentic, stretches, it's way cuter. And now you know my favorite way to take my favorite band t-shirt and make it into something that's a little more custom and fits me a whole lot better. I hope this helps save your wardrobe and also saves your sanity. Thanks for watching.